I was 28 years old when I met Daniel at a coffee shop in downtown Boston. He had kind eyes and an infectious laugh, and within 3 months, I was convinced he was the love of my life. We moved in together after 6 months of dating. Within a year, he proposed with his grandmother's diamond ring. I was floating on air. I really believed I'd found my person, my forever. What I didn't know was that I was about to marry into a family that would systematically destroy my life. Looking back, there were warning signs. Little comments from his mother, Patricia, about how I wasn't quite what they'd imagined for Daniel. Subtle digs about my career. I was a freelance graphic designer, as if it wasn't a real job. His father, Robert, would make jokes about my family's modest middle-class background compared to their old money status. His sister, Catherine, who was 2 years older than Daniel, seemed to view me as direct competition for his attention. But Daniel was different. He'd always defend me, or so I thought. He'd tell me his family was just like that with everyone, and that I shouldn't take it personally. I loved him desperately, and I was willing to overlook the dysfunction because I believed we were a team against the world. We got married on a Saturday in June at a country club in his family's neighborhood. My mother cried happy tears. His mother smiled for exactly 43 seconds in our wedding photos. I counted later when I was crying in my bed. The first year of marriage was genuinely good. Daniel was attentive and loving. We saved money. We talked about the future. We talked about having kids. I had finally felt like I was building something real, something permanent, something that mattered. The family drama faded into the background. I convinced myself it would get better once they saw how much I loved their son. I should have known better. In January, I found out I was pregnant. We hadn't been trying aggressively, but we weren't preventing it either. I was thrilled. Daniel cried when I told him. Actual tears of joy. We decided to tell the families at Sunday dinner at his parents' house. I was 8 weeks along, far enough that it felt real, but early enough that I was nervous about announcing it. Daniel assured me his parents would be overjoyed. "A grandchild," he said dreamily. "They're going to lose their minds." They did lose their minds, just not the way we expected. I'll never forget the moment Patricia's face went white. We just announced the pregnancy, and for a full 10 seconds there was complete silence in the dining room. Then she set down her fork with deliberate precision, the kind of movement that screams controlled fury. "When did this happen?" Patricia asked, not looking at me. "We just found out 2 weeks ago," Daniel said, squeezing my hand under the table. "We wanted to make sure everything was healthy before we told anyone." "And neither of you thought to discuss this with us first?" Robert interjected. I felt confused. Discuss? With them? We were married adults. But before I could say anything, Catherine laughed. A sharp, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. "This is insane," she said. "Daniel, are you completely sure this is yours?" The words hung in the air like a physical thing. I felt Daniel's hand jerk away from mine. "What the hell, Catherine?" he snapped. But there was something in his voice, a hesitation that made my stomach drop. "I'm just asking questions," Catherine said coolly, studying her nails. Given her background and her need for attention, it seems convenient that she gets pregnant just as Daniel's firm is about to give him junior partner status. "That's enough," Robert said, but he said it to Catherine, not in defense of me. Then he looked at me, and his expression was calculating. "Sarah, when exactly did you get pregnant?" "That's none of," Daniel started. "The conception date would be sometime in late October," I said quietly, confused and hurt. "Right after we went to Vermont for our anniversary." "Before or after you supposedly had that gynecology appointment?" Patricia asked. I stared at her. "I didn't have a gynecology appointment in October. I had one in December for a routine checkup, and that's when I found out I was pregnant." Patricia exchanged a look with Robert that I couldn't read. It was some kind of communication that had been perfected over decades of marriage. I was an intruder, an outsider, trying to decode a language I'd never be fluent in. "This is a conversation we should have in private," Daniel's father announced. "But there are some things you and Daniel need to understand, Sarah. Our family has certain expectations, certain standards, a hasty pregnancy, especially under these circumstances, is going to raise questions. What circumstances? I asked. We're married. We wanted this baby. You say that now, Patricia said coldly. But we know how these things work. Financial manipulation, accidental pregnancies that are somehow never accidents. We've seen it happen to Daniel's cousins. Are you calling me a liar? I could feel my voice shaking. We're calling you exactly what you are, Catherine said, her voice dripping with contempt. A gold digger who thought trapping our brother was the perfect way to secure your financial future. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to defend me, to stand up, to say something. His face was flushed. He looked angry, but it wasn't directed at his family. He was looking at me with doubt in his eyes. Doubt I'd never seen there before. Daniel, I whispered. We need to talk about this, he said finally, privately. The ride home was silent. When we got there, Daniel went into our bedroom and closed the door. I sat on the couch, one hand on my still flat stomach, and cried. This was supposed to be one of the happiest moments of our lives. Instead, I felt like I was under investigation for a crime I hadn't committed. He came out an hour later. My parents want a paternity test, he said without preamble. What? They want confirmation that the baby is mine before they'll accept it as part of the family. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Daniel, that's insane. I have never cheated on you. I've never even looked at another man since I met you. I believe you, he said, but the hesitation in his voice suggested he didn't entirely. Then tell them no. Tell them you're my husband and that you trust me. But he didn't. He just looked tired and conflicted. It's not that simple. My family has always been protective. They worry about me being some kind of con artist? Is that what you think I am? Because if you believe that, then we have a much bigger problem than what your parents think. He didn't respond. He just stared at the wall. That was when I realized something terrifying. He had already decided to doubt me. Whatever his family had planted had taken root. They'd given him permission to question me, and he'd taken it. The next 3 months were a nightmare of increasing isolation and hostility. Daniel's family seemed to have organized a campaign to convince him that the pregnancy was suspicious, that I'd somehow manipulated him, that I'd never been good enough, and now I was trying to trap him into taking care of me and my bastard child. That was Catherine's actual word. Daniel started working late, really late, 11 p.m., midnight, sometimes 1 in the morning. He'd come home smelling like alcohol, but he never wanted to talk. He wouldn't touch me. When I tried to tell him about baby appointments or things I'd read about pregnancy, he'd just look at his phone. His family called constantly. His mother's voice on the other end of the line became like ice water in my veins. She'd ask pointed questions about my health, my job, whether I was maintaining my fitness, or if I was using the pregnancy as an excuse to let myself go, as if what my body looked like mattered when I was carrying her grandchild. The worst part was that Daniel was pulling away from me bit by bit. It wasn't sudden. If it had been, maybe I could have fought back. But it was gradual, like slowly releasing the air from a balloon. One day he'd be distant, but civil. The next, he'd forget to ask how I was feeling. By the next week, he'd literally call me by the wrong name while talking to his brother on the phone, calling me that one instead of Sarah. I was 4 months pregnant when things escalated. I'd had a difficult ultrasound appointment. Nothing serious, just some fluid measurements that needed to be monitored. I was anxious and needed emotional support. I called Daniel at his office. "Hey, babe," I said when he answered. "The ultrasound went fine, but..." "I'm in a meeting," he said flatly. "I'll call you back." He didn't call back. He came home at 11 p.m., got a drink, and ignored me completely. I waited until he got into bed, and then I tried talking to him again. "Daniel, I needed you today. I was scared." "You're always scared about something," he said without looking at me. "Every time there's a pregnancy thing, it's like the end of the world. It's exhausting." I felt like I'd been slapped. "I'm carrying your child. These concerns are normal. Or maybe you're creating problems, so I'll pay attention to you." That's when I knew. That's when I realized that his family had successfully convinced him that everything I did, every concern I had, was part of some elaborate scheme to manipulate him. The man I'd married was still in there somewhere, but he'd been buried under a mountain of family pressure and doubt. I stopped telling him things after that. I stopped trying to include him. I went to doctor's appointments alone. I bought things for the nursery alone. I researched baby names and read pregnancy books alone. It was safer that way. At least I knew what I was getting. When I was 7 months pregnant, everything came to a head. I woke up one Saturday morning to find Daniel already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with his laptop. He looked like he hadn't slept. "We need to talk," he said. My heart stopped. "Okay." My parents have been very clear about their position, and my lawyer agrees with them. My lawyer? He had a lawyer discussing our marriage? What are you talking about? They've recommended that I file for divorce before the baby is born. That way, I can establish custody and financial arrangements without the complication of you making claims during the separation. The room was spinning. I couldn't breathe. "You want a divorce? Daniel, I'm 7 months pregnant." "This isn't what I wanted," he said, and I could hear his parents' words coming out of his mouth. "But my family is right. You used this pregnancy to trap me. I can't do this anymore." "That's insane. I didn't trap you. We talked about having kids. I wanted this baby because I love you, and I wanted to start a family with you." "You can't expect me to believe that. My parents have contacts, very important people. They know about situations like yours. They said you fit the profile of someone who... Who what, Daniel? Someone who what?" He looked away. "Someone who would do whatever it takes to secure a financially stable future." I got out of bed. I felt something break inside me, something that had been holding me together. "Get out," I said quietly. "What?" "Get out of this room. Get out of this house. I don't want to hear anything else you have to say." He tried to argue, tried to explain, but I was done. I went into the guest room and locked the door. I called my mother. I called my best friend. I started researching lawyers at 3 a.m. while crying so hard I thought I'd hurt the baby. But that was just the beginning of the horror. For 2 weeks, we lived in a cold silence. Daniel was in the master bedroom, and I was in the guest room. We didn't speak except for essential communication. He was communicating with his family, constantly. I could hear the hushed conversations on his phone, the way he'd stop talking when I got near. Then, on a Tuesday night in early April, Daniel came to me with a job offer, a spectacular one, a transfer to their London office for a 2-year assignment that would start in 3 weeks. He was going to take it, alone. "What about the baby?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "We'll figure it out," he said vaguely. "I'll send money. You can stay here until you get back on your feet." The house was in both our names. I'd contributed to the down payment with money I'd saved from my design work, but I didn't care about the house. I cared about the crushing realization that he was abandoning me. "Your family put you up to this," I said. He didn't deny it. 3 weeks later, Daniel left for London. On the day he left, his parents came by the house. Patricia was wearing designer sunglasses and an expression of cold satisfaction. "We've made a decision," she announced, as if she had any authority over my life. "This house is owned primarily by the family trust. We're going to need you to vacate the premises within 30 days. "What?" I was 8 months pregnant. "You can't do that." "We can and we have," Robert said. "We're preparing custody arrangements for the child, but until the baby is born, you need to find other accommodations." "Daniel is the one who owns this house," I said. "Daniel is part of our family," Patricia corrected icily, "and we protect our own. You're being very generous by giving you 30 days. Most people wouldn't be so lenient." I started to shake. "This is illegal. You can't just kick a pregnant woman out of her home." "We're not kicking anyone out," Catherine said sweetly. "You're welcome to stay if you sign the papers, acknowledging that Daniel is the sole owner of this property and that you have no claim to it." I was being played. The entire thing had been orchestrated to force me into a corner, sign away my ownership of the house, or get evicted while 9 months pregnant. "I'm not signing anything," I said, "and I'm calling a lawyer." Patricia smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Of course you are. That's exactly what we expected you to do. Do you know how much a custody battle costs, Sarah? How much a legal war with a family like ours costs?" She let that sink in. Our lawyers eat breakfast with judges, Robert added. We have resources you can't even imagine. You want to fight us? We'll destroy you. We'll take the baby, and you'll be left with nothing but debt. I'd never felt so terrified and so alone. My hands were shaking so badly that I had to sit down. They left me with paperwork to sign and a deadline to get out. I moved into my parents' house at 8.5 months pregnant. My mother was furious. At Daniel, at his family, at the situation. My father looked devastated that his daughter was in so much pain. I tried to protect them from the worst of it, but they could see it all over my face. My daughter Emma was born on April 28th, 3 days before my deadline to leave the house was up. She was perfect, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and Daniel's eyes. I held her in the hospital and sobbed. This beautiful, innocent creature had a father who didn't want her, a paternal family that viewed her as a weapon to be wielded in their war against me. I was terrified. How was I going to do this alone? How was I going to be a single mother on a freelancer's income? How was I going to fight a legal battle against people with unlimited resources? But then something shifted inside me. That fear transformed into something harder, something colder. Rage. I'm not ashamed of my rage. My rage was justified. My rage was the only thing that kept me moving forward. I hired a lawyer, a brilliant woman named Jennifer Santos, who specialized in family law and had a particular talent for fighting wealthy families. I told her everything. The gaslighting, the pressure, the forced eviction, the abandonment. She listened carefully, taking notes, her expression growing darker. They've made mistakes, she said finally. A lot of them. They thought they could bully you into submission because you looked vulnerable. But they've documented their intentions in writing, and that's going to hurt them. What can I do? I asked, holding Emma's tiny hand. We're going to file for child support. We're going to fight for custody. And we're going to make sure Daniel understands that there are legal consequences for abandoning his pregnant wife and child. But more than that, she said, leaning back in her chair, we're going to find out if there's fraud or financial misconduct in their family trust, because I suspect there might be. Jennifer was brilliant. She filed the initial child support claim, which forced Daniel and his family to acknowledge their financial situation for legal purposes. For the first time, they had to provide documented income, investment statements, trust documentation, everything. What we found was stunning. The family trust that had funded their lifestyle for decades contained money that had been obtained through securities fraud. Nothing recent enough that it had current legal consequences, but old enough that it was the foundation for everything they had. When Jennifer dug deeper, she found evidence of tax evasion, falsified charitable donations, and a shell corporation structure designed to hide money from capital gains taxes. This is beyond my expertise, Jennifer told me at our next meeting. We need to bring in forensic accountants and possibly the IRS. I met with federal investigators. I provided them with everything, all the documents, the correspondence, the paper trail. I wasn't trying to destroy Daniel's family out of spite. I was trying to protect my daughter from a system that had already shown it would lie and manipulate to get what it wanted. The investigation took months. During that time, I was rebuilding my life. I took on more freelance clients. I moved into a small apartment. My mother helped me with childcare so I could work and attend lawyer meetings. It was hard, but I had a purpose. I had a mission. I was going to make sure that what happened to me didn't happen to another woman. The first court date was for the child support hearing. Daniel showed up with his own team of lawyers. He looked different, polished, corporate, like he'd become a stranger. He wouldn't make eye contact with me. The judge listened to both sides. The case for child support was straightforward. Daniel was a high-earning professional who had abandoned his pregnant wife and newborn child. He was legally and morally obligated to support his offspring. Mr. Richardson, the judge said, looking at Daniel over her glasses, you claim you were manipulated into this pregnancy and that the child may not be yours. Yet you haven't pursued a paternity test. Can you explain that? Daniel's lawyers conferred, and his lead attorney spoke up. Your Honor, my client is willing to submit to a paternity test if required. The test was done. Emma was unquestionably Daniel's daughter. The biological evidence was irrefutable. The judge ordered Daniel to pay $3,500 per month in child support, retroactive to Emma's birth. Additionally, she ordered him to maintain health insurance for Emma and to contribute to childcare costs. Daniel looked like he'd been hit with a physical blow, but this was just the beginning. 6 months after Emma was born, federal investigators presented their findings to the U.S. Attorney's Office. The case was substantial. The family trust had engaged in deliberate tax evasion for over 2 decades. The shell corporations had been used to hide millions in capital gains. Charitable donations had been falsified to claim tax breaks that weren't justified. Warrants were issued. Robert and Patricia Richardson were both arrested and charged with tax evasion, money laundering, and securities fraud. Catherine was charged as an accomplice in the tax evasion scheme. She'd actually helped orchestrate some of the false charitable filings. The news hit the media like a bomb. Prominent Boston family charged in massive fraud scheme. The articles described their history, their society connections, their prestigious positions in the community. All of it was now tainted by criminal investigation. Daniel wasn't charged. He didn't have sufficient knowledge of or involvement in the schemes, but he was implicated. His name appeared in articles about the family. Clients found out. Professional relationships deteriorated. His firm quietly reassigned him to a less prestigious division. His parents hired expensive defense attorneys. The case went on for 2 years. Jennifer kept me updated on every development. I testified before a federal grand jury about the family's pressure and manipulation tactics, about how their aggressive and illegal financial maneuvers had personally affected me. While the criminal case progressed, there was also the civil litigation. The SEC filed its own suit against the family trust. Multiple victims of the securities fraud, people who'd lost their own life savings, filed civil suits. The trust's assets were frozen. Restitution payments were ordered. What had once seemed like unlimited wealth started to look very limited indeed. The final criminal conviction came down on a Tuesday in March. Robert and Patricia Richardson were each sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for tax evasion and money laundering. Catherine received 3 years. The judge's statement was scathing about the deliberate nature of their crimes, about the arrogance that had made them believe they were above the law. I watched the news coverage with a complicated mixture of emotions. I wasn't happy. I wasn't celebrating. Destroying Daniel's family hadn't made me feel better about what they'd done to me. What it did do was create a kind of closure, a recognition that the universe had a way of balancing the scales. While his parents were in prison, Daniel had to make serious decisions about his future. He couldn't maintain the facade anymore. He couldn't pretend that nothing had happened. And slowly, painfully, he began to face the reality of what his family had done and what he'd been complicit in. He reached out to me 6 months into his parents' prison sentences. He called on a Wednesday evening while I was giving Emma her bath. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Sarah, it's Daniel." I didn't respond immediately. I didn't know what to say to this man who had been my husband and had betrayed me so completely. "I'm sorry," he said, and his voice sounded broken. "I'm so sorry for everything." "You're sorry?" I laughed bitterly. "You're sorry for abandoning me while I was pregnant? For allowing your family to manipulate you into doubting me? For leaving the country?" "Yes, all of it. I was so caught up in trying to please them, and I lost myself. I lost you, and I'm sorry for that." I wanted to believe him. There was a part of me that desperately wanted to believe that the man I'd fallen in love with was still in there somewhere. But that part of me was silent now, buried under everything that had happened. "It's too late to be sorry, Daniel." "I know," he said quietly. "I know it is. But I want to try to make this right. I want to be in Emma's life. I want to be a real father to her. We negotiated a custody arrangement. Daniel got Emma 2 weekends a month, and he paid additional support for private school and extracurricular activities. He was making less money now. His career had been damaged by his family's scandal, but he was paying, and more importantly, he was showing up for Emma in a way that mattered. The divorce was finalized without drama. We split our few remaining assets. I got the apartment I'd been renting. He got custody of some family art and a small investment account. It was civilized, if sad. It's been 5 years now. Emma is in kindergarten, a brilliant, kind, curious child who has no memory of the chaos of her earliest days. She loves her father, and I've made peace with the fact that he's trying. He's not perfect, and what happened will never be entirely okay, but he's present, and that matters. My career has flourished. I started my own design firm, and I've built something real and sustainable. The financial stress that once kept me awake at night is gone. I own my own apartment. I have savings. I have security. As for Daniel's family, Robert and Patricia have served their time and been released, but they're under close financial supervision. The restitution payments are ongoing. Catherine served her sentence and moved to California, trying to rebuild her life away from her former social circles. I occasionally hear updates through mutual acquaintances. Her life looks very different now. Humbler. Normal. I don't know if I forgive them. Forgiveness seems like a gift they haven't earned and don't deserve. But I'm not angry anymore. My anger served its purpose. It drove me to fight, to persist, to refuse to be victim, and that has made all the difference. Did I get revenge? In some ways, yes. But the revenge wasn't calculated or cruel. It was simply the truth. I let the legal system do what it was designed to do. I provided evidence. I testified. I refused to be silent. And the truth, it turns out, is a powerful form of justice. Emma asked me recently why she doesn't see her father as much as some of her friends see theirs. She's old enough now to notice these things. Your dad loves you very much, I told her, and I meant it. And he's been through some difficult things in his life, but he's trying hard to be present for you, and that's what matters. Did you and Dad have a big fight? She asked. I thought about how to answer that. How to explain betrayal and family dysfunction to a 5-year-old who deserved honesty, but not trauma. We did, I said finally. But sometimes when families go through hard things, they learn and grow from them. The important thing is that I love you. Your dad loves you, and we're both here for you. She seemed satisfied with that answer. If I could go back to the moment before I met Daniel, would I change anything? I don't know. I wouldn't have Emma, and she is the greatest gift of my life. But I wouldn't have suffered either. I wouldn't have been doubted and isolated and betrayed. I wouldn't have had to fight legal battles when I should have been enjoying early motherhood. But here's what I've learned. Suffering doesn't have to define you. Betrayal doesn't have to break you. And sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, building something real, and refusing to be destroyed by people who tried to destroy you. I'm not a victim. I never was, even when it felt that way. I was a woman fighting for her life and her child's future, and I won. That's the only ending that matters.